The great hall was full of wolves. Six-pack representatives stood in their formal lines, shoulders back, chests out, wearing the quiet arrogance of men who had never once doubted their place in the world. Banners hung from the stone ceiling. Candles burned in iron holders along every wall. The air smelled of pine resin and old ceremony. King Caden Dusk stood at the front of all of it. He was tall in the way that mountains are tall, not impressive so much as simply present, unavoidable, a fact of the landscape. His dark hair was pulled back. His jaw was set. His eyes moved across the room with the practiced calm of a man who had learned, a long time ago, that showing nothing was the same as showing strength. He opened his mouth to speak. He was going to announce his chosen queen, Lady Mara of the Northern Ashpack. Politically sound, strategically necessary, personally nothing. But then, he had stopped expecting personally anything a long time ago. He got one word out. Then it hit him. Not gently. Nothing about it was gentle. Silver heat, starting somewhere behind his sternum, moving outward through his ribs, his arms, the back of his neck, and then a pull so certain and complete that his whole body turned before his mind decided to. He turned the way a compass needle turns. He did not choose it. She was standing near the back of the hall. Small, still, wearing a healer's gray. She had come to tend to a border guard who had taken an injury 2 days ago and had not fully recovered. She was not supposed to be remarkable. She was not supposed to be anything except invisible in the way that Omegas learned to be invisible in rooms full of people who outranked them. But the mate bond did not care about rank. The mark appeared on his neck. He felt it rise like a brand, and from the way her hand flew to her own throat, to the same spot, the same heat, he knew it had appeared on her too. Every wolf in the hall could smell it. He held her gaze for exactly 3 seconds. Her eyes were the color of still water. She looked frightened, and then she looked something else. Something more difficult to name. Something like recognition. Like finding a door you did not know you had been looking for. He looked away. He finished the announcement. Lady Mara of the Northern Ashpack would be his queen. The hall applauded. The ceremony continued. Caden Dusk stood at the front of it all with silver heat still moving through his chest, and said every word he was supposed to say, and did not stop, did not deviate, did not look toward the back of the room again. He had worked too hard for this throne to let a feeling dismantle it. Mac. He summoned her that night. Her name was Seraphine Voss. He learned this from his beta, who delivered the information without comment, but whose expression said a great many things that comments would not have been able to. She came to his private study alone. She walked in the way people walk when they have decided not to be afraid even though they are afraid. Chin up, steps even, hands at her sides. One hand held a small pendant at her throat. Moonglass, he noticed. A delicate thing. She gripped it the way someone grips the last solid object in a shaking room. He did not offer her a chair. He told her the bond was inconvenient. He used that word deliberately, the way people use small words when they are afraid that larger ones will cost them too much. Inconvenient. He told her that an Omega healer could not stand beside a king, that his pack, his alliances, and his political position depended on the union he had just announced, that the mate bond, however real, however recognized by every law of their nature, would not be claimed. Not by him, not by her. He told her to leave the territory within the week. He watched her face while he said it. He was looking for something to justify what he was doing. Anger, maybe. Anger would have been easy to work with. Tears would have been manageable. Even cold silence would have given him something to push against. She gave him none of that. She looked at him the way you look at something you have already decided to survive. Her hand tightened on the pendant. Her eyes did not fill. She stood very still for a long moment, and then she said 3 words in a voice that was entirely level. "Understood, my king." She left. He sat in his study for a long time after the door closed. The silver heat in his chest was still there. It would be there for a long time. He told himself it would fade. He told himself a great many things that night, and he was wrong about most of them. Seraphine went to the border territories. There was a settlement there, a small, half-pack community at the edge of the kingdom's reach, the kind of place that existed in the margins of maps and the margins of importance. She set up a healing practice in 2 rooms above a grain merchant's storehouse. She learned where the market was. She learned her neighbors' names. She learned to sleep through the pull of the bond, which took 3 months and was the hardest thing she had ever done. She called the ache something manageable. She was very good at calling things something manageable. Caden married his chosen queen in the autumn. The ceremony was grand. The pack representatives attended. Banners hung from the stone ceiling again. Everything looked exactly as it was supposed to look. His wolf spent 6 months trying to find north. It searched the way something searches when it has lost the only thing it recognized as home, circling, restless, never fully settling. Then it went quiet. Caden mistook the quiet for acceptance. He was wrong about that too, but he would not know it yet. A year passed. Then a little more. Seraphine's practice grew. People came from 3 settlements over. She had a reputation for being thorough, for being careful, for never charging more than someone could actually pay. She kept a small garden behind the storehouse. She kept the window cracked at night. Habit, she told herself. She did not examine the habit too closely. The moonglass pendant stayed around her neck. Until the night it did not. It cracked on an ordinary night, no storm, no ceremony. She was reading by the window when she felt the heat leave the glass, felt the small, precise snap of it, and looked down to find both halves in her palm. The break was clean. No light left in either piece. She set them on the windowsill. She looked at them for a while, then she went to sleep. 200 miles away, in a stone palace full of candles and banners, and people who depended on his steadiness, Caden's wolf went silent. Not the quiet of rest, the quiet of absence. He felt it the way you feel a tooth pulled. The space where something was, is somehow louder than the something itself had ever been. He did not understand what had happened. He would not understand until morning. By dawn, his pack healers had confirmed it. His wolf was gone. Not suppressed, not sleeping. Gone. Taken with the clean finality of something that had been given back to the one who gave it. His alpha strength was diminished. His shift would not come. The deep instinctive certainty that had guided every decision of his life, the inner voice that had always known true north even when the man did not, was simply absent. A room with all the furniture still in place, and no light source anywhere. His beta found him in the training yard before sunrise, knuckles bloody from the stone wall, still trying, still believing that force would bring it back, that if he pushed hard enough against the absence, something would return. Nothing returned. The challenges began within a month. Pack representatives who had stood in that hall and applauded became careful in their language, diplomatic in their distance. His chosen queen began repositioning herself quietly, the way people reposition when they can see which way a structure is leaning. His advisors used very gentle words to say very direct things. Caden held the throne through memory and ruthlessness. He knew every debt in every room. He knew every alliance, every fracture, every weakness that people believed was hidden. He had been dangerous before the wolf. He remained dangerous. But hollow, a new kind of hollow that no amount of strategy could fill. He went to find her 8 weeks later. He told himself it was for answers. He told himself he was not going to ask her for anything. Both of these things were partially true and entirely incomplete. The border settlement was smaller than he expected. The healing practice was above a grain storehouse, which was not what he would have imagined for a maid of a king, which was a thought he did not let himself finish. He stood outside in the early morning, while she finished with a patient, a farmer's child with a winter cough, and waited. She came out and saw him, and stopped. She did not look afraid. She looked the way someone looks when they have survived a difficult thing, and the difficult thing is now standing in their doorway asking for something. Steady, careful, a little tired in the way that had nothing to do with sleep. She led him inside. He asked if she had felt it, the wolf, the absence, the night the pendant broke. He asked if she knew what had happened. She was quiet for a moment, then she told him yes. She said she had felt the bond release, that she had held both halves of the pendant in her hand and set them on the windowsill and gone to sleep. That surviving something was not the same as being untouched by it. That she had cried, if he wanted to know, not for the bond exactly, but for what the bond meant she had briefly believed was possible. She had cried, and then she had stopped, and then the next morning she had opened her practice and seen 12 patients, and that was that. She looked at him steadily. "The goddess did not punish you," she said. "She agreed with what you already decided." Her voice was not unkind. It was something more difficult than unkind. It was clear. "You decided I was not worth a wolf's recognition." She simply made it official. He sat with that. He did not argue. He did not produce reasons, which would have felt, even to him, like a deeply wrong thing to do. He sat with what she had said, the way you sit with something that has landed exactly where it was aimed. Then he said, "I was afraid of what you were." She considered this. "I know," she said, "so was I." There was a pause between them that was long enough to hear. Not uncomfortable, just honest. The specific silence of two people who have finally said the true thing after a long time of saying everything adjacent to it. He did not ask to stay. She did not invite him. He stood up, and before he could perform anything, before the king's instinct to control the exit of a room could take over, he left. He walked out of the door first, which was the first genuinely decent thing she could think to say about him. She kept the pendant pieces on the windowsill. Not as a monument, not as a wound she kept reopening, just because they were there, and she passed them every morning, and eventually a scar is just part of the landscape. You do not stop seeing it, you just stop being surprised by it. Her practice continued to grow. She hired a young healer from the eastern settlement to help with the winter months. When coughs and frost injuries came in steadily, she learned to make the specific tea that the grain merchant's elderly mother needed for her joints. She started sleeping with the window closed, not because the pull was gone exactly, but because she had decided, one ordinary morning, that she was done leaving it open for something that was not coming back. She took no mate. She did not miss the idea of one as much as she had expected. She was, by most measures that she had learned to count, well. Caden abdicated the following spring. Not in defeat. That was important to him, and it was also true, which made it easier to do. He had held the throne through a wolfless winter, through intelligence and stubbornness, and the accumulated weight of 2 decades of knowing exactly where every body was buried. Politically speaking, he had handled every challenge. He had maintained every alliance. He had proven, if nothing else, that Caden Dusk the man was not substantially less formidable than Caden Dusk the wolf. He still chose to step down. He installed a governance council and moved into a quieter role. Consultant, conscience, the man in the corner of the room whom everyone listened to, because everyone knew he was the most dangerous person present. It suited him in a way the throne never entirely had. He stopped waiting for the wolf somewhere around the 2nd year. Not because he had made peace with it. He was honest enough with himself to admit that peace was probably not coming. He stopped waiting, the way you stop waiting for a person who has left, not because you are healed, but because waiting is its own kind of cage, and he had already spent enough of his life in structures of his own construction. He did not seek Seraphine out again. He thought about her. He would be dishonest to pretend otherwise. He thought about still water and moonglass, and 3 words delivered in a level voice. "Understood, my king," and the specific quality of her steadiness in his doorway 8 weeks after his wolf went silent, when she had every reason to be satisfied, and was not satisfied so much as just done. He did not reach out. He thought she deserved the quiet. To her 5, the moon goddess made no further appearances to either of them. Some things are spoken once. The bond was gone. The wolf was gone. The pendant was in 2 pieces on a windowsill in a border settlement above a grain merchant's storehouse, where light came through the window every morning and fell across the broken glass and kept moving. Seraphine passed it every day on her way to the door. She did not move it. There was no reason to move it. It was just a thing that was there, part of the room, part of the morning, part of a life that had been built quietly and carefully, and entirely on her own terms, from the rubble of something she had not chosen, and had not deserved but had survived anyway. Outside, the settlement was waking up. She opened the door and went to work.